Hi everybody. We're going to close out this look at the different parts of the speaking test by thinking about pronunciation, and in this lecture we're going to focus specifically on intonation and sentence stress, two critical parts of the band descriptor requirements for achieving a band 7. Basically, intonation and sentence stress is all about how tone, pitch and stress can change what we mean. Okay, so first of all, let's think about sentence stress and how pronunciation in terms of sentence stress changes meaning. Have a look at the following sentences and try reading these out loud, stressing the bold and underlined words. So first of all, you can do this with me. I don't think there's anything individuals can do about climate change. I don't think there's anything individuals can do about climate change. I don't think there's anything individuals can do about climate change. I don't think there's anything individuals can do about climate change. I don't think there's anything individuals can do about climate change. Okay, so you notice that stress there. Now, each of these changes in stress completely changes the meaning of the sentence. Let's look at how. The first one then, if we were to continue speaking, we might hear something like this. I don't think there's anything individuals can do about climate change, but others might disagree. I don't think there's anything individuals can do about climate change, but I haven't researched it enough to know. I don't think there's anything individuals can do about climate change. We just have to accept that there's nothing that we can do. I don't think there's anything individuals can do about climate change, but organizations can have a huge impact on the environment. I don't think there's anything individuals can do about climate change, but that doesn't mean people should neglect other aspects of the world. So as you can see, changing the stress from one word or one expression to another expression, even though it may seem like a tiny change, it completely changes the meaning. And that's because where you place your stress in the word will signify the purpose of your sentence. The most heavily stressed word or words will signify the purpose of your sentence. So it's vitally important that you get the stress right. Now, there is no right or wrong word to stress. It's context dependent. It depends on what you are trying to communicate. However, it's important to bear in mind it's quite rare to hear certain types of words stressed. So these words here, these type of words are rarely stressed. So you need to make sure that you really need to stress these words before you choose to do so. So prepositions, articles, pronouns, conjunctions, and modal verbs, you can stress these. You notice I did it there with can, the modal verb can. You can stress these words, but they're more rarely stressed. So you need to make sure it's appropriate to stress these words before you do so. Most sentences instead will stress these types of words: verbs, nouns, adjectives, and adverbs. Those are the most commonly stressed words. But of course, as I keep saying, it's very much context dependent. If we move from sentence stress to intonation, let's have a look at what this is. Many people confuse these two things, intonation and stress, but while similar, they are not the same thing. Intonation refers to the pitch of your voice as you pronounce a word or a sentence. To help explain this, think about the way that we ask questions versus the way that we make statements. Is this the way to the train station? It's this way to the train station. Okay, so notice the change in pitch there. The first one goes up. Is this the way to the train station? Station, station, down, up. Okay, so you got an upward intonation. And then it's this way to the train station. We go down when we make that kind of statement. So that's intonation. In terms of IELTS, intonation can play a key role in our answers. Although we're unlikely to be asking any questions in our exam, so we don't have to worry about that upward intonation in that sense, it's still important to intonate in a natural way in order to secure a high pronunciation score. So there are a number of different tones that can help us to differentiate meaning and purpose when we intonate. Here are the most important for us in the exam: the down tone, the across up tone, the down up tone, and the up down tone. Now we're going to look at each of these in turn. So let's start with the down tone. This is likely to be the most common of the tones that you use. We use this rhythm in our voice to indicate that we are giving information. Let's have a look at some examples. The most important thing is that children get a good education. Notice, nice simple downward. Children get a good education. You're just going down smoothly to reach the bottom. One of the main reasons why we need more sports facilities is that this will improve public health. Again, this will improve public health. Slowly, smoothly, down in your intonation. For example, last week I was asked for my opinion in a questionnaire about local business. Questionnaire about local business. Down, smooth intonation, that's the most common one you're going to use. Make sure you're not bouncing around all over the place at the end. So when you're reaching the end of a sentence and it's just a general statement giving information, downwards smoothly until you finish. The across up tone. We use this rhythm in our voice to indicate we are reeling off items on a list. We're giving items on a list to the listener. Now this is useful when we're using multiple adjectives to describe a noun, or when we're giving multiple quick reasons for something. Let's look at examples of each of these in turn. In my opinion, this was a cruel, thoughtless, and irredeemably awful decision. So notice those two adjectives in the middle there that begin, or like they start and they carry on the list. Cruel, thoughtless. You start on a mid-tone, and then we go up. Cruel, thoughtless. So so it's not down up. It's not do, but do. I know this sounds a little bit silly, but this is the tone we want to create when we're reeling items off on a list. This was a cruel, thoughtless, and irredeemably awful decision. Now notice when we get to the end of the list, we come back down again. An irredeemably awful decision. So you come down on awful decision. And what we usually do is we stress the final adjective quite strongly. Cruel, thoughtless, and irredeemably awful decision. Now here's an example of giving multiple reasons. Teaching children to play a musical instrument is important because it improves cognition, increases hand-eye coordination, and develops their appreciation for the arts. Okay, same thing here. Improves cognition, increases hand-eye coordination. So you've got mid up, and develops their appreciation for the arts. And again, at the end there, giving information, so you come down in your intonation. Okay, moving on to the down up tone. We use this to indicate that we have reservations. So this is a really useful tone when we want to go in a different direction in our answer. So when we're introducing a sense of contrast. And we use this a lot when using words like however or nevertheless, or when we're following a dependent clause with a contrasting independent clause, like we looked at in the previous lecture. Some examples. I feel that it's a good thing for countries to focus on their tourism industries. Nevertheless, they need to be careful to prioritise their own citizens ahead of tourists coming from other countries. So notice, nevertheless, we've got quite a low tone on the never the. We're not saying never the, we're saying never the. Nevertheless, down up, they need to be careful. And here's an example of a complex sentence. Despite the importance of a decent income when it comes to quality of life, people need to also remember that there are some things that money can't buy. Okay, so here the intonation comes at the end of the dependent clause, where the down comes on quality of, and then the up comes on life. So when it comes to quality of life, da 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 da, you can hear that there. Typical intonation when we are trying to introduce a sense of contrast. The listener then anticipates that the answer is going to go into a different direction, which is what we want to happen. And finally, we can think about an up-down tone, which is when we want to express a lot of emotion. Again, this comes in useful when we want to emphasize a particular point, suggesting that we feel very strongly about it, which can happen quite a lot in part 3 of IELTS because we're asked more personal questions, more abstract questions that we may feel quite strongly about. So some examples here. Personally, I'm really against those who argue that art should be removed from high school curriculums. I'm really against those. I'm up and I'm down. Okay? It is of critical importance that we learn how to curtail our use of credit cards. We must destroy our dependence on plastic. Okay? Notice particularly the critical importance part. It is of critical importance. It is of up and then it's down. Okay, and then a little bit in the second sentence as well. We must destroy our dependence on plastic. But this one covers the whole sentence. So we got we up and down and down. We must destroy our dependence on plastic. And the last one. Payday loans are, by some distance, the worst thing to happen to responsible spending in this country for years. Okay, another up and down. A couple of them here. So the worst thing to happen to. So we're not saying the worst thing. It's stressed, but it's not a cross. It's not the worst thing to happen to. It's the worst thing to happen to responsible spending in this country for years. So up and down. The worst thing. We up and down. Okay. You could even use it on by some distance. By some distance could also have like an across and up tone to indicate that you haven't finished with your thought yet. So by some distance, the worst thing, or by some distance, the worst thing. So intonation can be varied. You can use it in a number of different ways. It's not like there is always just one appropriate type of intonation, but at the same time, there will be times where particular kinds of intonation will seem strange or out of place. So you need to make sure you're using your tones and pitches appropriately. So we're just going to look at a model answer of a question now. And the reason we're looking at this is because I just want you to read the answer out yourself and consider how you would use your intonation and which words you would stress as you answer this question. You may, as always, want to just answer this question yourself, first of all, just as a little bit of practice. But we're looking at the question, some people say that food in an expensive restaurant is always better than food in a cheap restaurant. Would you agree? Now, the answer that I've written down is here. And like I say, I just want you to try reading this yourself. You might want to try recording yourself and just think about the intonation which is most appropriate based on what we've talked about, based on the down tone, the across up tone, the down up tone, the up down tone, and thinking about which words you would be most likely to stress in your sentences. When you've done that, hit play and we'll see if my intonation and stress matches yours. Okay, so some people say that food in an expensive restaurant is always better than food in a cheap restaurant. Would you agree? Absolutely not. No. In fact, some of the best food I've ever eaten has come from what you might call cheap restaurants, usually smallish mom and pop eateries where the food all has that home cooked feel and there's nothing fancy about it. Having said that, I must admit that I've rarely had bad food at an expensive restaurant, but I've had a few unpleasant experiences at cheaper ones. But if you're careful and you use your instinct wisely, you can get delicious, warm, high quality food at very low prices and in very large portions. So what you should notice here is that instead of just one word being stressed in a sentence, you usually get quite a few words stressed. And it's almost about paying attention to the unstressed words that's very important, because those unstressed words can all sort of be joined together in something called connected speech. For example, you can see the admit that I've rarely had, and that will come across as admit that I've rarely had. It's all like combined into one word. So those unstressed expressions are also very important. And if you think about the stressed words here, there are often one, two, sometimes even three words together. You can see at the end there that very large portions. And here they're almost like there's a unit of a stressed expression rather than one word. So it's not like you're stressing each word individually and you're saying very large portions, but it almost becomes like one unit. And you start at a high point and you come down. So, and very large portions. Essentially, you're really enunciating each of those words. But for the unstressed words, you're not enunciating. You're rapidly going through them and connecting them all together. And you're often dropping vowels. There's quite a lot of the schwa sound with these unstressed words. So what I would suggest is listen to the answer again. If that went over your head a bit, listen to the answer again. Follow through with the bolded words on the screen. Try to replicate that answer by saying it yourself, focusing on those bolded words, and then see if you can notice when you do your listening practice the different intonations, the different stressed words, the different unstressed words, and the way that they all sound. Really pay attention when you're listening. Make it active listening, not just passive listening. Okay, now that's going to draw this section to a close, and in the next section we're just going to talk about some general advice that you can use in the IELTS speaking exam, as well as a model run through of an entire IELTS speaking test.